There we go. Well, welcome everyone. I'm Fred Schiff from All County Music, and today our special guest is Brian Balmages. Brian is going to be doing Band Reimagined. Brian's got a degree from James Madison University, and he happens to have one from down south here, his master's from the University of Miami. I've had the opportunity to actually introduce one of his world premiere pieces, though he wasn't there. But
which one was that?
It was the one at the Our Reply concert. So
yes.
You'll forgive me if I forgot the name.
Fanfare Canzanique.
That was it, and I even pronounced it properly that evening. So Brian's got some really good information about reimagining your band and what happens next, because we're all wanting to know what happens next. And I am going to turn this over to him. I'll put a short commercial in the middle after he's talked about some things. But other than that, it's time for me to, ladies and gentlemen, a warm welcome to Brian Balmages, please.
Thank you so much. Good to be with you all, right? Listen, I've thought a lot about kind of the world that we're in right now. And in a lot of ways, I think we've all been living on virtual platforms lately, right? Whether it's Zoom or Google Meets or Microsoft Teams or all those things. And I think we all have gotten a lot of great information from them. I think we've all talked about ways of implementing curriculum, ways of doing all these things, which is great. But there's one thing that I really struggle with, and that's the point of today. What I struggle with is this idea that it's great, all of the ideas that I'm getting from different band directors, ones that are saying, you know what, we're going to be doing on Monday, we're going to be introducing a composer, and then all through the week, we're going to research that composer, come up with things, and then on that Friday, we're going to actually bring the composer in. We're going to have them in like as a guest clinician, and we're going to do a Q&A. Great, right? That's one example of something that's great. I have heard from people that have said, hey, we're going to do this. We're going to do a listening study, and we're going to do that. Great. We're going to research different pieces. We're going to do all those different things. And I think those are all really great ideas. The issue that I have is that none of these are engaging the kid musically, right? And that's the problem, is that we are not engaging the kid musically. And if we don't do that, we're going to lose them, right? We can come up with all the assignments from now until, whenever, but it's not going to solve that problem. And so I've been thinking to myself, like, okay, how are we going to address this? Like, how are we going to actually give them some kind of direction and something that they can do to play? And so I should backtrack a little bit and explain to you, first of all, some of you may know through social media. I know, Kathy, I know you know, but I have joined a group that's called CRI, the Creative Repertoire Initiative. And this is a group that we developed. Sounds like there's like construction going on above me right now. I'm not really sure what, because I'm in a single family home, but hopefully that'll stop soon. So I developed this part of this group called CRI, the Creative Repertoire Initiative. And CRI is a group of composers that came together to basically try to seek solutions, right? To come up with solutions to a lot of the problems that I think we are all facing, which is repertoire. What are we going to do? How are we going to motivate our kids? Very quickly, the members of CRI, in addition to myself, there's Stephen Bryant, there is Michael Doherty, Julie Giroux, Jennifer Jolly, who is, I love her, she's great. John Mackey, Pete Meekin, Alex Shapiro, Frank DeKelly, Omar Thomas, and Eric Whitaker. And so a lot of names in there, okay? Now, to be very clear, the point of this group was not for us all to come together and say, hey, we're going to come together and we're going to release stuff and we're going to kind of CYA and at least make sure we're protected. And now that wasn't the point of the group. The point of the group was to come together, brainstorm, come up with templates, come up with ideas that could then be handed out to everybody out there so that you all would wind up with actual practical solutions that can be used. And I'm going to go through a lot of those today, because at the end of the day, I'm all about practicality, right? If you've ever been to one of my sessions, I always talk about how it's great to get on the soapbox and talk about how we are creative people, right? How many times have we read that on the internet, right? We are creative people, and we will rise above this, and we will make sure that our kids are taken care of, and we will find ways. And that's all well and good, but what are the answers? Because right now, every time I talk to a teacher, they're all concerned about, I want to, but how in the world am I going to do this? If I'm virtual, how am I going to engage my kids? If I've got a beginning band class, how in the world am I going to engage them? Right? I just don't know. And so what I'm here to do is to provide some answers to that. All right. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to start off with a share screen here. We're going to be doing quite a few things here, actually. We're going to be listening to some sound. We're going to be looking at things. So I'll kind of keep you all posted here. Hopefully you guys can all see this now. And so I decided to start here because this kind of starts us at the beginning. All right. Let's look at the absolute baseline scenario. What's the baseline scenario? The baseline scenario is I've got a band class. None of them have any playing experience. None of them have any instruments. If I'm lucky, I will somehow manage to get an instrument in their hands in the first month after we figure out how the parents can do the paperwork, how to do this. If I'm not lucky, we might not see that at all. All right. And so what does this do, this resource? First of all, I'll mention this is on Smart Music. So for those of you using Smart Music, you will have access to it there. What I really like about this, and Darcy Vogt Williams, if you know anything about Darcy, she's a Texas band director. She's in Austin, Texas. And she is, what's a good word? Amazing would be a good word, okay? In her approach and everything, and she has an ebook out there called TRL, Teaching Rhythm Logically. I invite you to check it out. It's more of a method for teachers than it is for students. It's a kind of a way of coming up with certain ways of saying things that she's found that kids really get. So let's take a look at what this does, all right? So first of all, this allows you to start teaching rhythm to your kids. And to be honest, you can start this on the very first day. We know that even when kids are in class, forget about COVID. We know that even when they're in class, there is a time that it takes them before they're actually, engaged in playing. The first 2 or 3 lessons are all about assembly and disassembly, and this are the rules. And it's very easy to lose kids. And so I think when we're in a virtual environment, the faster we get them doing something, the faster we get them performing, the better. And so this is a very simple page. There's nothing revolutionary about this page, right? I have a shirt that I got from a guy I did an interview with, and it says trumpet playing, it's not rocket surgery, which I think is a hilarious shirt. But the point being is that on this page, there's nothing that is rocket science, but the way you use the page and the way it all comes together really becomes a pretty interesting thing. And so let me show you some suggestions on how you can do this. First of all, there's the counting system that she teaches to everybody, and everybody can use their own counting system. Darcy always says the best counting system is the one that you use every day consistently. All right, so let's be clear on that. Now, with that being the case, you'll see that there are 10 exercises here. Notice that they're perfectly lined up. Right? One measures 1 through 4. And so what Darcy would start doing is having the kids say them out loud, 1, 2, 3, 4, right? And they have to pulse the inside, right? And they'll be tapping their foot. But here's where it gets really fun. So let's say that you're at home and you're trying to make this fun for kids, right? You're trying to get rhythm fun for kids. So she'll do a couple things. One thing she'll do is something called speed band. She'll do speed band. And what she'll do is she'll set a metronome at, quarter equals 90 or quarter equals 82. And she'll say, all right, we're going to pick a line or pick the whole page. And you're going to say the whole page. If you mess up, you're out. And it's the honor system, right? You got to admit it. And if you mess up, you're out. And then you go through. Everybody who gets through, now we're up to quarter equals 100. Then we're up to quarter equals 108, 120, however fast you want to go. and it becomes a really fun, engaging game for the kids. Another thing that she does is she will say, okay, now we're going to do another game where we are going to read the first measure of every exercise. So kids are now reading all the first measures from up to bottom, right? And so that becomes, and then you can do the same thing with the second, third, and fourth measures, right? Reading them as columns. And then she also does a zigzag, where she will start with line 1, measure 1, jump to line 2, measure 2, line 3, measure 3, line 4, measure 4, and go through all of those as well. And then once they get to line 4, measure 4, they start going back the other way. All right, so you're just literally zigzagging all the way through, and kids love it. Now, there's another element of this which I really like, and this is ensemble pieces. So we can actually get kids playing in ensembles without instruments, which I think is fabulous, right? Maybe they can get the a cappella app. There is Band Lab. There's this new thing that we just mentioned, which I'll go into a little bit more detail, this upbeat music app, which is being created. But there are multiple ways that kids can either multi-track themselves, or there are ways that the kids can upload to you or through Smart Music and create found sound ensemble pieces, where you'll see there's examples, you know, clapping, patting thighs. One kid could go ch-ch-ch, other kid can go k-k-k, all these different ideas, right? But lots of different concepts in there for them. And so as you go through this, you'll see we get into half notes, half rests, and all this. And I'm not really going to spend much time on the rhythm element of this. I really wanted you to understand that this is something that we can engage them right away. Okay. For those of you that are wondering, well, my kids are not here, right? I've got much more advanced kids. Great. We can get into things like, you'll see we're getting into 3/4, 2/4 time. The ensemble pieces will go there into eighth notes. We do eventually get into tied notes. We get into dotted notes. We get into certain counting things. By the way, the way Darcy does this, and again, it's everybody's different. She actually has them pulse. So if you look at that second measure, she'll have them go 1 and 2. And so by doing that, you're hearing this 1 and 2. They're feeling the eighth note pulse behind it. She has never had, and people ask her all the time, do kids start going woo, woo, woo when they're playing? She's never had a kid do that. She's never had a kid do that, but her kids play with fabulous rhythm. Okay. So this is a little bit on this, a little bit on this whole concept right here. Why is that? Okay, there we go. And so you can see we get into 16th notes and we get into all of those things. And so a lot of information for you right there. Okay, so let me jump on to kind of one of the things that I think is the most exciting thing, which is what I'm calling the Reimagine Initiative. This was born out of CRI, this Creative Repertoire Initiative. So we all know that we are going to be in a whirlwind of situations for the coming year. All right. We don't know. In some cases, some of us are going to be 100% live, but with majorly social distance classrooms. Some of us are going to be in a hybrid model. Some of us are going to be completely virtual. And some of us will be changing by the week. Right? 1 week, you're back in socially distanced classrooms until 2 seconds from now goes away, right? And then somebody catches COVID and then suddenly the school's shut down and you're back. And so part of our goal with this was to create repertoire that can literally adapt to these adaptable needs. Okay. So a lot of you know Blue Ridge Reel. If you don't know it, I'll play you just a little bit of the original. So you get the idea, right? And so that's a great example, okay, of a piece that, hey, in a normal situation, there are tons of bands. Probably that and one other piece of mine are probably the most played by middle school groups. However, in this new environment, there's literally no group that can play it. And so I started asking myself, how adaptable can we make these pieces? And so if you look at the instrumentation page, you're going to see here the answer to that question. So in this particular case, if you look under the adaptable parts, you will see that I have a note that it includes parts 1, 2, 3, and 4, which means that this is basically a 4-part adaptable piece. Now, it's really important that you all understand something. We have defined different levels of flexible instrumentation music, different levels of flex music. So what we all traditionally have called flex band is what we would call semi-flex or just flex. And what semi-flex means is that if you have a band with awkward instrumentation, these charts will probably work for you, okay? But even though they most likely will work for you, you still have to have either a bari sax or a trombone or a bass clarinet or a tuba. You have to have one of those instruments to cover that part 5. What happens in a classroom when your band is decided by, on Mondays, you have kids with the last names beginning A through F, okay? What if there's no bass line in there? What if you wind up one day with a group of 4 flutes, and the next day you wind up with a group of 6 saxophones, and the next day you wind up with 8 trumpets? And yet you want to be able to rehearse this piece. And so this is the solution. This is where I came up with a solution. And so you will notice that every instrument gets every part. And I will explain more about that in a minute, because people will say, wait a minute, the tuba gets all those parts? Yes. The tuba gets parts 1, 2, 3, and 4. Do we expect to hear 4 tubas playing all 4 parts? No, not at the same time. But let me get into that in a minute to explain that. Now, I think the first thing, before we even talk about the benefits of this, I think a lot of you are going to be like, well, what does it sound like? Right? What does it even sound like? And so I have a recording of what it sounds like, played by trumpet ensemble, 4 trumpets, and that's it. Right? And to do that, I actually called, and a lot of us in South Florida know him, Jose Sabaja, lead trumpet player with the Boston Brass. And I called him and said, hey, can you tell me how you mic yourself when you do all these videos, because they sound amazing and I want to try and record this and I don't want everything to phase and sound awful. And so he said to me, he goes, well, I'll tell you what, just send it to me and I'll record it for you. I was like, okay. And so he did. And so what I want you to hear is what this sounds like. Keep in mind what you just heard. All right. And so I want you to hear what it sounds like with 4 trumpets. And that's it. And the only other thing that you're going to hear is the background track, which is the piano through percussion. So it's important to notice that for all these pieces, we are also making MP3 accompaniment tracks available. All right. So if a kid is at home by themselves, they can play along with this. Okay. There's a whole slew of options. So let me let you hear a little bit of this. So you get the idea, right? And it's just a sample of it, but it's an idea, right? And so that is just a really great example of what you can do with this. And again, that's just for 4 trumpets. That is not with a trombone on the bass line. That is not with even this alternate horn part, which I'll explain that in a minute as well. So let me explain to you kind of the way this whole thing is put together. And you'll notice a few things. First of all, you will notice if you look, for example, there is an alternate horn and tenor sax line, okay? That alternate horn tenor sax line is an example. Let's say that we all know that when you take a regular part and you transpose it for horn, right, or tenor, that those parts wind up with incredibly awkward ranges, right? And so we know that there are incredibly awkward ranges. And let me see if I can get my little friends to stop doing this real quick. All right, there we go. So anyway, when you notice that there are a couple things going on here, that when they do transpose to the horn, very often that horn is put in an incredibly awkward register, either very high or very low. And when you're trying to use that for a middle school student or even a beginner student, it doesn't work. It doesn't work for them. And so that part is designed to almost be a combination of some of the other parts, and sometimes it's just something that is a little bit different and goes in their own kind of note for a minute. And if you've got a confident kid, great, put them on that. If you don't, put them in unison with other people, because there are octave adjustments that are made. But that's an example of what we do in the horn and tenor sax part. Below that, you're going to see the piano part. Now, I know that a lot of us, when we say, hey, there's a piano part, we have nightmares of piano proficiency exams in college, right? And we think there's no way I can do that at all. What I want you to understand is two things. Number one, the piano parts for these are extraordinarily easy. I mean, look at this page right here. They are easy, okay? Boy, 41, that's about as complex as I'm going to get for you. But in addition, as often as we can, we are also putting in chords, all right? And that enables two things. Number one, for those of us that have a jazz background, great, even easier to just play along with that. But the other key thing is that if you wind up with such a hybrid model that you have a guitar player in your class or whatever it might be, they now have something that they can play. Now, of course, they can also play the individual parts, right? But in general, it's just giving you options for all these different things that you can do, okay? So that's another element. And then you've got the percussion parts, which again, you can either put the percussionists on those parts that are written down there, or they have access to the adaptable 1 through 4 parts as well. So you could actually, if you have the ability to do it, you could have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 percussionists play this as a percussion ensemble piece. Right? Some of your mallet players are on percussion 1 through 4. You get a separate kit on vibraphone, and then you've got places on percussion 1 and 2. All right? So there's a lot in there. What does the accompaniment track sound like? It'll sound like this. Now, I want you to be aware. So normally you're going to hear a click track, and then the track will start. In this particular case, practicality. If I give them a 4-beat click track, and then I start them off, look what's happening in the percussion. They got nothing. They're not going to be able to line up. So you're actually going to hear that click continue until measure 9, then it goes away. But this is what they can play along with. Okay, so that's what Jose was playing along with, right? My son's coach's name is Jorge, and that's why I get it. So that's what Jose was playing along with, and that was it, okay? So that gives you a little bit of an idea. Now, some of you are going to say that's really well and great, but I've got younger kids that are only playing grade 1 music right now, okay? And maybe you're worried about the 4-part thing, all right? Well, there's another solution that I have here, and that's called this is going to be scaled down one level. So I'll show you what I mean. So you see here grade 1. So we've gone down about a grade level and a half. One of the tricky things about this is grading, right? Because now you are potentially taking what was originally a middle school flute line and making that available to a middle school trumpet player. All right. And so that makes it a little bit more challenging. However, let's talk about one of the things that I really want to do is explain to you how much is possible now that wasn't possible before. And so we're all so stuck in what we can't do. Let's stop and talk about what we can do. Number one, what can we do? If we're doing these kind of adaptable things, we can say to everybody in the entire ensemble, all right, everybody, this week we are all going to learn part 1 together. So now First of all, you are teaching everybody in the ensemble the exact same rhythm in the exact same measure with the exact same dynamic levels. And you can now talk about phrasing. You can talk about note length. You can talk about all of those things, okay? And you can rehearse. Maybe they're going to be muted, right? Maybe they're going to be muted and you're going to conduct and say, all right, everybody play measures 1 through 8. And then you say, all right, who felt really good about that? Maybe your tuba player raises their hand. Say, great, play it. And suddenly your tuba player is getting the chance to demonstrate the melodic line to the entire ensemble. I mean, this pandemic could be like the tuba player's like hallelujah moment, right? If we want it to be. And so there's different options for that. So we want to think about that. Now, the other thing is, then maybe we say, all right, now we're going to have everybody learn part 2 the following week. So you can work your way through that. But in addition to all those things, right? In addition to all of those things, okay, the other element that we have to be able to think about is, first of all, when we do come back into the classroom, and maybe we only are allowed to have 9 or 10 kids, right? And notice with this, as a grade 1, there are not 4 parts. Now there are only 3, okay? So I'll let you see the score, only 3 parts. And that's intentional because younger kids are going to not feel comfortable if it's only 1 or 2 of them on a part. So we do less parts, which enables more of them to play on each part when they are able to be socially distant in the classroom together. Now, what are the advantages of this? Okay, first of all, here's a new thing. When was the last time you played a piece where the kids get to choose the orchestration? If you think about it, right? Now, these are full-length band pieces that kids get to choose the orchestration. So you know what's going to happen. You're going to say, hey, first of all, kids get excited because they never know who's going to show up on any given day. They don't know what instruments are going to be there. But then they get there, and then you know what's going to happen. Some smart aleck kid is going to say, hey, let's put flute and tuba on line 1, all right? Because that's going to sound really terrible. And then they come up with different combinations for other instruments. Now, some of them probably won't sound very good, but what's going to happen is some of those combinations are going to sound amazing. And that's going to lead into entire discussions of orchestration. So there's a lot of cool things that can be done here. Now, again, a lot of you are concerned. What can we do with just 3 parts? Here's the original. And this one. You have to be really creative. You have to be really creative with the way that they are done, okay? But it is possible. It is absolutely possible. So if this session does nothing else for you as we're going through, this session for you has to be the answer of, okay, I can do this and there's repertoire out there that I can do it with. Whether we're virtual, whether we're in the classroom, it is possible to do, all right? Let's go in a completely different direction for a moment, and let's look at a piece that actually was inspired by Frank DeKelly, which in turn was inspired by Terry Riley's In C. Those of you that may know that piece that Terry Riley wrote in the 60s. And the entire piece, I'll just flat out show you. The entire piece, this is the score and the part. The entire piece is based on cells. And so the kids get to choose when they come in, and the kids get to choose how long they stay on each line. Some kids may stay on line 1 and repeat it 8 times. Some kids may stay on line 1 for 1 or 2 times and then jump to line 2. Some kids may say, you know what, I'm going to jump to line 5 for a couple times and then jump backward to line 3. And then what they just did was they just created musical anticipation. They just anticipated what's coming up later down the road. The piece is going to change every single time. Now, what I did in Terry Riley's piece and also in Frank's piece, which is called In C Dorian, in those pieces, you know, they basically are through composed, the entire piece. My piece, I've divided into sections to give it a little bit more structure for a student. Now, other things that are great about these pieces, and I'll show you a piece by Alex Shapiro later that does very similar things. We're also very likely going to be faced with working with groups that have massive differences in ability level, right? And so we're going to have kids that are going to be playing lights out and they can sight read anything, and other kids that are going to not really be able to do much at all right now, but they're all in the same group. Then those kids play the cell they're most comfortable with, right? If you're only comfortable with cell 1, fine. And then jump to cell 2 as you're ready. And then maybe jump down to cell 8, all right? Let's listen to a little bit of what this sounds like. Just trumpets. Even a first-year player can do some of this, right? And maybe some of your kids can't all do all those things, so give them the one thing that they can, learn one thing on this page and be ready to do it. Let's jump ahead a little bit. And I'll jump to the end. So you get the idea, all right? But there's so many options in there. And again, the kids can help make those decisions. And what I'm encouraged about is that all of these pieces are bringing spontaneity back into rehearsals. Something that we sometimes kind of overlook because we're so focused on whether it's festival or adjudication or whatever it may be. Okay. And so this is bringing those things back, which I think is incredibly important. All right. Let's look at some other pieces real quick, and then I'm going to show you some other resources entirely and jump into some of the other CRI composers. Alarm, one of Randall Sanders' really popular pieces until nobody was around to be able to play it together anymore. And so Randall said, you know what, I'm going to do the exact same thing. And he took it in the same exact concept. You'll notice in the recommended part assignments, when you do have full band again, fine, there you go. But here's how the other things I can see. When we get back into a normal environment, these pieces are pieces that you can do coincide with your full band. So maybe full band is playing Alarm, and then maybe you're going to send a trumpet trio to adjudication or to be able to play, and they're going to play the trio version. Right? Or the clarinet will play, or you have a mixed instrumentation. All of those are available. All right, here's a little bit of this one. And again, this is all available as so you get the idea on that one, all right? Another great example, a piece by Adrian Sims. If you don't know Adrian, I highly recommend you learn about him. He's a very young composer who actually lives very close to me. He's been studying with me a little bit as well. An amazing trombone player, an amazing composer. This is a great chance to not only have your kids playing chamber and adaptable music, but music by one of their peers, because Adrian is only 20 years old. He's a sophomore, I guess now going to be a junior. And this is what this piece sounds like. Again, just showing you examples. This is with trombone ensemble, I think. This might be the whole thing. Nope. Here's trombone ensemble. Notice we try to build some rest in for some of the players as well. That's really important. So the funny thing is, a lot of people have said, hey, this might be the year that we're just starting to do a ton of chamber music and really, really small ensembles. What I love is that these fully adaptable pieces allow you to do both. When you're able to have full band, have full band. When you need to have chambers ensembles, have chamber ensembles, okay? Let's say you need something even easier. Here's Voyage of the Dragon Armada. This is a great half piece by Tim Loest. Again, 3 parts, but in this particular case, everybody only has 6 notes. So it's like, okay, can we do 6 notes in 3 parts? What does that even sound like? Okay, so you get an idea of that as well. Okay, so those are in general some of the pieces that we're looking at with what FGH is calling the Reimagine Initiative. We eventually are going to be releasing a Flex series as well. And I kind of view these 3 series with our normal concert band series that we have as sort of like this road back or road to recovery, where this Reimagine Initiative really makes anything possible. The Flex series, then as the bands start to grow back into a normal size, and then the regular bands when we're back all up and running. All right. I also want to take a little bit of time and talk more about what kids can do at home when they don't have a band, because a lot of us have them doing things. For example, I mean, all of us typically are saying, all right, we have chromatic scales that we do before band every day, right? And it's like, how am I going to motivate the kids to do that at home? And I've actually thought a lot about that. And so I decided to come up with something called That's My Jam. All right. And this is a book, I subtitle it Technique with Attitude. And this is perfect for a middle school kid. We have sent this stuff to Smart Music. I don't think it's on yet, but they're working on it. All right. All the things that I'm going to show you are going to be accessible to the kids. There's play along tracks that they can use, but this book really is made by its play along tracks. So we go through 8 major and minor keys, all very much band keys. And you're going to see this is the standard format, okay, of something that these kids are going to see and learn to play along with. Now, the thing is, it's like, well, how do we get them engaged? Because this stuff alone is not very exciting, right? Well, I guess it is if you're, I don't know, a really weird middle school kid. Right. But in general, I think they're not going to be too excited about this. So what we did was we created some background tracks that are really, really fun. So check this out. This is with the advanced scale pattern number 3. It's really fun. If some of you had your instruments out right now, I'd say go grab them and play. But here's G minor. What does this sound like? This is G minor. This is study number 1. So every one of them is almost like a mini tune in itself. And we really try to get the kids all motivated through that. Towards the end of the book, all of your brass players will go into some kind of lip slurs, and your woodwind players will go into extended chromatics that fit the range that they're in. And there are always markings about what's possible and not possible. I mentioned this to Fred, but I mentioned this to you guys as well. There are some directors that are asking, I love this idea. If I'm virtual, how am I going to get this to all of my kids? FGH will work with you on that. So if you wind up purchasing a set of these books through All County, FJH will work with you to allow you to be able to have digital versions that you can then email out to the kids. And I think that's important to realize. Most publishers are doing that now. And I think most of you realize that, but publishers want you to play their music, right? And dealers want you to help support the dealers. So we're all working together to try to make that happen, okay? Tuned in. Here's another great example that will work on intonation and help your kids. I'll play you a snippet of a group that uses this every day. This is that intonation, right? It's just locked in solid. Let me let you hear just a little bit more. Oh, I forgot to mention this is a middle school band that uses this book. The idea, right, of intonation and things like that. That's Henry Middle School from Austin, Texas, Robert Herrings. And so these are all based on certain drones, and kids can do these at home as well. And if you listen to the kind of drones that they have, I mean, a lot of you have these in your band, but this is now available to them at home. Right, so you can get a little taste of that. And so kids can practice this at home and really work on their ear training there as well. All right. And very quickly, because I want to leave about 10 minutes of time for us to chat for Q&A. One thing is, let's look at some of the other CRI composers and what they are doing. Here's a piece by Alex Shapiro. And one of the things that I love about this, so we all know that Alex is amazing with her electroacoustic approaches to music, right? Well, one of the things that she has done here is, this is again a piece that, this is the part and the score. And she has created a recipe of per se, where it's like, all right, here's what you're allowed to do. You must do something, and you have to do one of these lines. You eventually have to do this. You have to do that. But also, if you realize that the lines are lots of different types of lines, including unpitched sound percussion, if you look down there at the bottom of the page. And then she has created a track that kids can play along with, that this will work with 1, 2 kids or 50 kids, right? And so kids can actually play this and have it sound complete. The track is really fun. So that's an example of that, all right? I want to jump to Frank DeKelly. He's done a slew of these, and he actually just finished a flex version of Vesuvius. Now, it's not a fully adaptable version, so it's not fully, but it is a 5-part. And he flat out said he thinks that there will be some bands that, even though they have the instrumentation, may prefer to play the flex version just because they'll sound better on it. And so I thought that was really interesting. But here's Simple Gifts. And one of the things that you can learn from this, Simple Gifts and then all the Reimagine initiative that I showed you, technically the approach is the same in terms of being fully flexible. He just shows it a little bit differently, and his approach to writing it is a little bit differently, but you can still hear what it sounds like. We'll jump ahead a little bit. So other examples there. Let's look at the world of improvisation for a moment, okay, and show you what's possible there. Omar Thomas, he was down at I think last year or the year before, but Omar is a very good friend of mine. We're both actually James Madison University graduates. He is now starting his assistant professorship at UT Austin. And so Omar wrote this 5-part semi-flex piece called Sharp 9. I asked him to call it #9. He refused, but whatever. Mine was a better title. And so he did. And you'll notice, again, he's making background tracks that are going to be available. The part 5 is also covered in the piano, left hand. So really, it could be almost a fully flexible piece if necessary. Here's a little bit of this. Okay, so you get a little bit of that. And then I want to show you, some of you may have really, really high level groups and you're just missing those really, really high level, more fun kind of pieces. So I'm going to show this to you. And this is a John Mackey piece, okay? And John, like me, struggled for a very long time to write anything. When he finally did start to write something and really loved what he was writing, he suddenly felt like he was actually accidentally plagiarizing Frank DeKelly. And so he actually said to Frank in one of our CRI meetings, Frank, I think I'm plagiarizing you. I'm really sorry. And Frank said, no, I don't think you are. So then John, in that spirit, called the piece, Let Me Be Frank With You. What I want to show you is that it is absolutely possible to still play that really rambunctious, fun music and still have it only 4-part. Now, this is another example of semi-flex. However, I asked John if he would do it, and he's going to create an accompaniment track that is of the D line, which is the bass line, and the percussion. So which means that then you can have any combination of players on any instruments playing the A, B, and C line. If you have a bass player, great, put him on that line. But he's going to make it available both ways. Check out how fun this is. All right, really, really fun, really fun. I love it, I love it. The last piece that I'm gonna share with you is Jennifer Jolly, who I really come to, she's just a beautiful soul. I mean, that's the best way to describe her. She's a good person. And this is a piece that, one of the few pieces that I know of that actually will work in a live Zoom performance. All right, and she wrote this long before COVID. And this whole piece is based on Japanese scales. And so there's a lot of culture elements right there as well. But all of these scales are then associated with certain rhythmic ideas that you can see on the top of the rhythms that she suggests. And so she actually has the players go through. You'll notice in this particular way she's orchestrated it, that the scales progressively move higher and higher. And this performance that I have is about 12 minutes long. It could be as short as 8 minutes long, depending on what the players do with it. And you would think, wow, there's not going to be anything good from this. It's going to be so odd sounding, but there's some really nice moments in here. I'll play you some in the middle of it. It's actually kind of fun, right? There's a lot of really, really nice things in there, all right? And then the last thing I'll leave you with is a piece that I just finished today. I'm not going to play it for you right now, but I just finished it today. And so I know there's a lot of folks that are big fans of Moscow 1941. I did just finish this today, and I'm really thrilled with the way that it sounds, all right? So there's a lot of information for all of you in there. And I want you to understand that if we approach this the right way, there is a lot of good that we can do. The one thing I'll leave you with before we do any questions are that consider for a moment that none of us at all are band teachers. None of us are orchestra teachers at all. And on the contrary, what I always say is we're all music teachers. And band is a vehicle, right? It's one of many vehicles that we use to teach music, but we are not band teachers. We don't teach kids how to band, right? We do teach them how to do music. And so all of this is designed to show you that there are actually a whole lot of things that we can do, right? That we couldn't do before. Orchestration choices, letting kids choose how a piece develops, you being able to be in a group of 60 kids and being able to solo one kid and work with that one kid while everybody else in the room is practicing their part, and you can hear only that one kid. That's not possible in any live situation. And I am hoping that over time, that while certainly we all want to get back to large ensembles, myself included, I'm hoping that when we do get through this, we will actually have a few things that we say, you know what? There are things that we can now do that we should keep doing that we weren't doing before, that'll help our kids move along. And so that's kind of where I want to leave you with all of this. And so I don't know if there's questions. I don't know anything. I know I saw Kathy's comment about the tiny bands, right? And it's funny because we're hearing from a lot of directors all over the country, tons of my friends in Kansas and all these different small programs that say, look, I have really tiny bands sometimes, and now I have solutions for them. Conducting classes in colleges are rejoicing. They're saying, wow, we now have literature that we can actually conduct and with whatever situation. So there's good that's coming out of this, all right? So any questions for me?
So go ahead and unmute yourself if you have a question for Brian at this time.
And maybe I just crushed it. Maybe that's just it, right? There are no questions.
Doesn't that happen? So here's the commercial. I just dropped into the Zoom chat all of the FJH thing, all of the FJH publishing items that Brian spoke about. Some of the other items by Frank DeKelly and some of the others are offered through their own publishers, so you can get it through them. But there's a spreadsheet out there. It gives you all of the information. You plug in the numbers that you need. We'll get you the books. It'll figure out the discount on the bottom. You can, if you can't download it now, just send me an email and I'll send the spreadsheet to you. That'll make it easy for you. And of course, we'll work with FJH to get you the digital parts so you can go ahead and email them to your students. This is very exciting. We're looking for ways to make music happen in this vacuum. And congratulations to Brian and all the other composers that are doing things to make it possible for your kids to play music together while they're apart.
I should mention, by the way, if you don't mind, I will mention to you that all the Reimagine Initiative pieces that I just sent you, they come automatically. It's in the music with a permission to copy and distribute to kids, whether it's copying in person, just giving them the part, or to digitize. That permission is granted inside of each one of those publications. So in those, you don't even need to contact the publisher. It's done.
Great.
So you said they're in Smart Music as well already?
No, not all these are in Smart Music. Some things are in Smart Music. Smart Music has a lot of these already.
The full arrangements?
Well, they have the full arrangement, but they also have the adaptable ones.
Got it. Okay, got it.
Yeah, they have them. But the thing is, like everybody, they're working with a smaller workforce right now, and they're getting inundated with stuff. So they're going to get some of these things out. But one of the things people ask me is like, well, what can we do if they're not? A lot of these pieces are in Smart Music. You can use the adaptable piece with the full band version. Now, Smart Music will flag wrong notes, right? Because the parts are going to be a bit different, but it's still a functional way of being able to get there. And then you, of course, as the director, can go through and look at that.
Well, the reason I mentioned that is that we had our spring concert in May, so we just made it virtual, and the kids played their parts to their parents with the accompaniment from Smart Music in the background.
Yeah.
So, it gave the kids a performance opportunity with full ensemble. And at that point, it wasn't even worrying about right notes and wrong notes. It was just preparing something to play for their parents.
Right. And of course, so there's that element of it. And then, of course, yes, there are sound examples and previews. On the FJH website, what you're going to find, so you're going to find the full realization. And a lot of times you'll hear the full band piece as well. Mm-hmm. You'll also hear a demo of it in some kind of combination, whether it's a trombone or trumpets or a woodwind, whatever it might be. And then the accompaniment tracks will also be on there for kids to play along with. So those are all things that the kids can grab. You don't need to be on smart music for any of that. They can just grab it and put it on their phones or their computers and play along that way. We're already hearing about some kids that are jumping into the acapella app, and they're loading this in there, and they are recording themselves playing the entire band piece. Mm-hmm. And then that's what they're doing. So it's really cool because kids now have, I mean, they don't have to rely on anybody. If they want to play, if they really love this band piece and they want to play it, they can play it by themselves, or them and their best friend can exchange and do that as well. So there's a lot of options.
Any other questions for Brian?
I just have a quick question. Are they playable? How do they sound without the accompaniment? Like, if a kid wanted to do, if a trombone quartet or whatever instrumentation wanted to perhaps do an ensemble for like our solo and ensemble assessment,
sure,
that would work, right? Without the accompaniment
track? It would work. Now it's going to sound a little bit different, but really in this world, everything's going to sound a little bit different, right?
Right. But if they were playing live, would it basically maintain its integrity as?
It would. And a matter of fact, I've tried to make sure all of our composers are really thinking about that. So you will see certain pieces like my Moscow 1941, for example. If there's no percussion, there's actually a rhythmic element that I added in one of the wind parts or one of the adaptable parts, so you can still feel a little bit of a sense of pulse. And so it is written. So that is, now I will say there are also pieces that, just like most things, that won't work in that situation. For example, Randall Standridge's Alarm, he has written several percussion breaks in there. All right. And so in that case, no, but he's saying, but that's why I give you the accompaniment track, which is great. But if you were to do a piece like Blue Ridge Reel or even this Moscow 1941, they will work. They will work.
I've been trying to, I'm going to start kind of an adaptable type of category in our solo and ensemble list. I keep that list, but so I'm looking for things that would work with whatever instrumentation a director might have available, to be able to add some pieces to the list and say, you can, whatever instrumentation you have, just you have to use your own judgment as to who you assign what parts.
Right. And I will mention with Randall's pieces, some of the ones that do require percussion, he's actually written like a drum set part, so you can get away with one player.
Yep.
And so there's a lot of flexibility, even if you do need percussion, that there's flexibility there as well. I tried in all of these pieces, and some composers fought me on it, but I wouldn't hear it. They were trying to duplicate the percussion parts they had in their original band pieces, and I said, listen, if you're writing a piece for adaptable 3 and 4 part ensemble, and then you require 9 to 10 percussionists to play it, that is completely self-defeating. It doesn't work. And this has got to be for smaller groups of people. If they've got 9 or 10 percussionists, fine, put them on the adaptable parts, put them on 1, 2, 3, 4, and fill them out with the battery percussion. But let's make sure that they function with smaller numbers of people. And so these pieces all do that.
I'm sorry, Fred, but how would I find the ones that you would, or do I just need to go through all of them? But I would love to have you let me know like titles that you think would work with just the basic, let's say trio or quartet. And at times you can double a quartet, you can make it, I don't care. I think
the easier thing, to be honest, would be to tell you which ones don't work, because the majority of them do. So that would be easy to say, all right, these are the ones that don't work. And the other thing I should mention too is that this is not the end of the road. We're releasing new pieces literally every week. And so you can go on to our website. It's just fjhmusic.com.
fjhmusic.com.
Yeah.
Make sure you put that music in there, not just FJH.
Correct. So it's fjhmusic.com/adapt. And it's a constant updating of what's there. And so once you find what you want, then you can go to Fred and you could say, hey, there's a brand new one out. And it's quite possible, you have to be patient. It's quite possible that Fred's going to say, I have no idea what you're talking about, because it might have been released. You might have just caught us on the very day that it was released. But if it's on our website, I guarantee you Fred can get it. And of course, because of his location, he can get it probably faster than almost any dealer in the country.
That's true. FJH is published here in Broward County. And there is a question, Brian, for you. Are there sound samples and previews on the website, on the FJH website for these things?
Yeah, there are. They're everything they need, whether it's the demo or the accompaniment track, it's all there.
And also, as a point of, just a point, the Count Me In is on the second page on the bottom of that sheet that's on the chat share, but it was smaller than everything else. So look for it as actually, it is on the order sheet.
It's all about life balance. You know, when you're larger than life, you're smaller than print.
That's right. Any other last questions for Brian? I want to thank Brian and FJH for helping us sponsor this afternoon and the information that was received. I think people have a few more arrows in their quiver right now that they can actually start with at when school begins. And if you have any questions for us, please let us know. I can be reached at Fred@allcountymusic. You have my phone number. That's Fred@allcountymusic.com, sorry. Or any of your road reps, or if we don't call on you, please call us. Our phone number is all over the stuff on a Google search. So
and
Brian,
I'll mention to all of you as well, I'm trying to help as many people as I can. If you feel like, listen, we have a district PD and there's a lot of people that this could be useful for, or if there are regional or state level or whatever that you all think like, hey, this is something that the membership would then feel free to reach out to me and we can talk. And so I'll just throw that out there. You know, I think right now we're all in this together. And I was telling Kathy earlier, actually a couple of you, is that the things that we do now, the actions that we take now are going to have a massive wake, and they're going to affect us for years to come. And Robert Smith has been talking to me about that for ages. And Bob Morrison, who a lot of you know from the VH1 Save the Music and everything that he's done. And so the more we come together now, I think the less injury our programs will sustain, and the quicker they'll rebound. So keep that in mind.
Brian, I have a question. So let's say, you know, Blue Ridge is one of my favorite pieces. So let's say my top group's playing that piece, but I want to do I always end my concerts with a full program finale where everybody's playing at the same time. Could I take those adaptable parts and incorporate them with the full arrangement? So the symphonic band's working on the arrangement, but then the beginners are playing, you know, something very simple to go along with it.
It totally works. It
Perfect.
totally works. The only place that there will be a couple of very small issues are going to be in that bass line, that part 4. So and the only time that'll really be an issue is if you have like tubas playing the line 4 versus tubas playing the original. And there will be a note here and there, maybe 5 or 6 notes in the entire piece where in order to make the fully adaptable version work, I didn't take them to the third of the chord. I put them on the root or vice versa. But other than that, and to be honest, for most middle school performances, it wouldn't even matter. Like you wouldn't even notice it. It'll work just fine. They're designed they're the same piece.
This is really, really helpful for those of us with, like, this year my symphonic band's 11 and my intermediate band is 12.
Okay. Wow.
And nothing was going to work. But now I think I can find some things that will be able to work at the appropriate level for those kids. You know what I mean?
And I didn't even get to a piece by Pete Meekin, but check him out too, Canadian composer. He has a piece that has like, it's grade 4 parts or grade 2 parts. Like it's a mixture of things.
Right.
And so there's some options there as well. So there's stuff out there.
Yeah, because I mean, for those of us that might have really, really talented kids, but small numbers, you know, but I don't have enough clarinets for a 3 clarinet split or 3 trumpet split. And so
and the other cool thing about this is like, you all know how it is. Sometimes it's like, okay, my band is a grade 2 band, but my tuba player or my bassoon player is freaking lights out amazing.
Right.
And they're sitting there playing footballs all day, every day, and I'm going to lose them.
Yep.
So now you put them on the same part as the flutes, and those kids are loving life. I mean, that's the beauty of what's possible with this now.
This is fantastic. Thanks.
Absolutely.
Miss you.
Miss you more. Fred, you're muted.
All right, now that we've shared all of that love, again,
Mhm.
thank you all for spending an hour with us.
I miss you too, Fred.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Well, Brian, again, thank you very much for joining us today and making yourselves available to us. We appreciate all of your information and the things you're doing. A big sitting ovation for Brian here, and we will see you all at another time. Thank you, guys. Have a great afternoon.
Thanks, everybody.
Thank you, Fred. That was great. Thank you, Brian.
Absolutely.
Bye, everyone.
Bye. And there they go. Oh, there you are, John. Finally showed up. Oh, and there's Edgar. Oh, didn't see your face.
I had the video off the whole time.
Oh, okay. All right.
Didn't want to subject anybody to staring at me for an hour. Staring at you was bad enough.
Yeah, well,
Two of us would only make it worse.
suffer. All right. I better stop. I've got to
Thanks,
stop
Fred.
recording this.
Hey, John.
Hey,
Hey, Edgar.
John.
How are you?
All right.